In the double murder of Ohio dentist Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique, there are a lot of interesting things that the police know now. And it wasn't always the case early on in this investigation. But right now, the police know a lot, but yet they're not letting on what they do know. They're not telling us what they know, but information and evidence is sort of slipping out in this case. And what do I mean by that? Well, the evidence just very recently that came out was that they recovered 9 millimeter spent shell casings. Very important evidence in this case, and I'll get back to that in a second. So on Tuesday morning, December 30th, 2025, a routine concern quickly escalated into one of the most disturbing double homicides in Columbus, Ohio history. At 9:03 a.m., the Columbus Police Department received the first 911 call. A co-worker reports that Dr. Spencer Tepe failed to show up for work, something described as completely out of character. Repeated attempts to contact Spencer and his wife, Monique, had failed. Approximately 9:22 a.m., an officer is dispatched to the Tepe residence on North 4th Street in the Wineland Park neighborhood for a welfare check. The officer knocks. There is no answer. With no immediate signs of distress visible from the exterior, the officer clears the call and leaves the scene. First of all, I just want to comment on that. That was a horrible job by that officer. That's what we would call in law enforcement as an okey doke. You know something? Talk to the 911 caller. You have that ability. Call the 911 caller and say, what's the problem here? And if he would have shown you or spoken to you about how this was so unusual, who lives with Dr. Spencer Tepe? Oh, his wife, Monique. She's not at home either. She's not answering the phone. And do they have any children? Yes, they have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Don't you think the officer responding should have asked those questions? Why didn't he? Why didn't he? Instead, he did what I call an okey doke. He did a shitty job of investigation, right? At 9:57 a.m., less than 40 minutes later, a second 911 call comes in. A coworker or acquaintance has returned to the home and now reports something far more alarming. The couple's young children can be heard crying inside, but no adult is responding. 10:05 a.m. Just minutes later, a third 911 call is placed. This time, the caller reports seeing a body inside the home through a window or doorway. Shortly after 10:05 a.m., officers force entry into the residence. Inside, they discover Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe deceased, both suffering from gunshot wounds. The scene is immediately secured, and the investigation shifts from the welfare check to a double homicide. 2 children, ages 1 and 4, are located inside the home. They are alive, physically unharmed, but had been left alone in the house with their parents' bodies. Initial scene findings. Investigators quickly confirmed this is not a murder-suicide. And how do they deduce that? Well, they deduce that because there's no weapon recovered on the scene. If this was a murder-suicide and it was done by firearm, the gun would be there. No obvious signs of forced entry. The killings appear targeted, though motive remains unknown. The home becomes an active crime scene as homicide detectives, forensic units, and evidence technicians begin the processing of the crime scene. So this is a double murder, but yet it seems to be a targeted double murder. And we know that the police knocked on the door here and left, which was ineptitude 101, I would call it. You have to do a better investigation than that. And look, no one was saving these people. I don't think they were killed during those hours where the officers walked away. I think it was much earlier in the morning. And that is another reason why it is so important. This whole timeline is so important. So, folks, We're going to dissect this case. And I'd just like to remind everyone, we are sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. And folks, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, like, make lots of comments. That's how we grow. That is how our algorithm makes this show what it is. And folks, also, I'd like everyone to know that it's a quick reminder. If you're looking for real crime insight, not YouTube theories, this channel is different. I'm a retired NYPD sergeant, and on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze cases the way cops and prosecutors do. What matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, then subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment. This is the real thing. It's experience. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
You know, folks, I am very excited about this case because I really believe that the Columbus, Ohio police, the Columbus, Ohio homicide unit has a very strong case here. And they're not telling us what they have in the way of evidence. They're not telling us what they have in the way of video. They're not telling us what they have in the way of witnesses. So we have to just dissect this case and surmise what they have from what we know so far. So what better way to dissect this case than have a co-host with me tonight, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good evening. Thank you for having me on. Good to see you.
You know, Mike, I think that this case, is very exciting in a lot of ways because it's so very, very interesting. And one of the things I wanted to put up on the screen here, here's the house. Now, the house has a Ring camera. No doubt, all of the houses here have a Ring camera. This is a affluent neighborhood, although I heard it's surrounded by not so nice areas. But that house that we're looking at, Dr. Spencer Tepe's house, is a $700,000 house and surrounded by others likewise. On the corner of this block is a traffic camera.
Yes.
And if we go back to the house again, there's a possibility that the killer or killers could have parked on another block and jumped the fence and came in through another entrance. And one of the things we also notice on the front of the house is a digital lock where you can punch in numbers to enter that house. Is it a possibility that the killer or killers is known to Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique and had the code to open that lock? Mike.
Yeah, Bill, when you think about that, if it's late at night, sometimes the early morning hours, and the killer, if possible, knew that house well, knew the Tepes well. If they came in through the front, if they, depending on how well they knew them, they might know that they do have a Ring camera, like many people do. And to avoid it, maybe they came in the back. But as you say, if you've got that code, you could punch that code in. And if they had some sort of mask over their face, they may have been able to gain access without waking up the Tepes. The Tepes may have been asleep. And then once they got inside, maybe the Tepes woke up. And then that was when the homicides took place. But it raises the specter of the fact that if it turns out that the police did not get any good video of a car pulling up around the front of the house, or maybe perhaps not very good video from the Ring camera, that indicates that person or persons were really intimately familiar with the comings and goings of the Tepes and how that house is situated and how much protection in terms of, anti-theft, burglar alarms, Ring cameras that had. That shows a real intimate knowledge of that home. And that would really seriously narrow down your list of suspects.
Mike, people ask all the time, and this happened on the 30th of December. So we're at January 4th right now, right?
Mhm.
People are so spoiled across this nation because I believe that the police do such a good job in so many major cities that people expect an arrest immediately. And this is a horrific crime. The public is very much interested in this because it's a beautiful couple. He happens to be a dentist, he's a doctor, right? Wouldn't appear to have any enemies that we know of. So why? Why did this happen? And how about the mistakes? And you see it on the thumbnail up on the screen. There's the mistakes that the killer or killers made. If you go into a house like this and there's no signs of forced entry, doesn't that tell the police that maybe you're known to the victims? When the house has no signs of robbery, when the house has signs of an organized crime scene, not a disorganized crime scene, no ransacking of anything, it looks like it's an inside job that perhaps, again, it's a known to. So the Columbus, Ohio detectives, every shift that they change shifts or early in the morning when they start, they're all getting together and they're doing what I call it hypothesizing and theorizing. Some people call it spitballing, but it's necessary for detectives and investigators, detective bosses, to all get around in a room and talk about the case, what they think, what they've done, the investigative steps they have taken, and what the results were. Also, in a case like this, there should be a tips log, opening it up to the public, have the public call. What do you know? And you notice some people get a little nervous about this. The police are asking for help.
Mhm.
They're asking anyone with video, either a Ring camera or video on your car or a cell phone video that may have some information on this case, to please send it in to them. And that is not a sign of desperation. That is a sign of good investigation, as they did on the Boston Marathon bombing. That I always cite that the results were amazing. So you use the public as your ally in an investigation like this, Mike.
Absolutely. Somebody heard something somewhere on that street, perhaps from the front or the back on the other street. Somebody may have, you jog people's memory when you start asking people for help. Say, wait a minute, it doesn't matter how small a little fact it may be. Was there something in the neighborhood that you saw maybe a few hours earlier, a rumor that you heard, something, please call it in. That gives the police tremendous assets. The public has tremendous information and they might not even know it. And when you look at this crime scene, the police obviously have a lot of information. They're being very tight-lipped. But interesting, when you look at the type of weapon, that wasn't a weapon that was in the house. Like maybe it started out as an argument and someone grabbed, say, a knife, like the classic thing, you grab a knife and you stab somebody. They brought the weapons in. This was a directed homicide. It was not a robbery gone wrong or a burglary gone wrong or an abduction gone wrong. All of this eliminates a lot of people, and it just narrows down the number of suspects. And to have the public calling in tips, anything whatsoever. If you think about something, you saw something, please do something, act, and call the police. That will greatly help because they want to tie up every single loose end they can possibly tie up, and they want to do this right.
100%. So important evidence clarification right now. It has been clarified that 9mm spent shells were recovered inside the house. That's a 9mm spent shell. So what does that mean? They did not specify how many. So we don't know how many, but what that tells us, this is a 9mm spent shell. And what you're looking at is a firing pin impression, which is also unique to the gun that this spent shell came from. In addition, this is a picture of the spent shell, but the extractor marks, also unique to the firearm that fired this, and we don't know how many spent shells. The other thing I said to Professor Mike was, this is beautiful, because when you load a semi-automatic handgun, you must load into a magazine one at a time, and however big that magazine is, whether it holds 10 rounds, 9 rounds, 12 rounds, the only ones that get 15 rounds are law enforcement clips. They're illegal anywhere else. But guess what? The person that loaded that semi-automatic, put those rounds into the magazine, potentially could have left his or her DNA on the side of those cartridges. So there's another investigative tool that investigators have that potentially could identify the person or persons that did this heinous crime. And you could see, here's a better picture here for those that aren't that familiar. You could see firing pin impression, extractor marks. Again, I don't want to get too much into the science of ballistics, but all of these things are unique markings on the spent shell. And then there's a system, and this is the last time I'll get scientific because I'm not a scientist. There's something called IBIS, Integrated Ballistics Identification System. These spent shells will go into that, and they will be able to tell if this firearm was used anywhere in this city, anywhere in this country for that matter, and through this system called IBIS. So that's the last time I'll talk about this, but great news knowing that now we know what type of firearm was used in this case. We don't know at this point how many rounds were fired because the Columbus, Ohio police don't want us to know that, because they may want to use that information when they come up with a suspect to interview, to interrogate. Because sometimes you have wackos that admit to things they didn't do. So you want to know that information and not put it out there in the public. So the exact amount of shell casings weren't published. Police have intentionally withheld that detail, which is common in active homicide investigations. So they want to also preserve investigative integrity, test suspect statements for non-public knowledge, avoid contaminating witness recollections, protect ballistics and trajectory analysis. So all of these are reasons that they keep these things quiet. They don't just put it out there for the whole world to see, because this information is pretty much for the police to know and only for them to know. This was put out on Facebook. This was written by the brother-in-law of Spencer Tepe. Spencer was my brother-in-law. My wife and I would stay at their place at least once a month. Never felt unsafe. While we don't have much information right now, everything we do know points to a calculated and premeditated murder by a person who knew what they were doing. Nothing was stolen, nothing was out of place, and there was no sign of a break-in. This clearly wasn't committed by your average street criminal. Your thoughts, Mike?
Bill, I think that's absolutely right. Just look at the way this was done. They got into the house. Either Mr. or Mrs. Tepe opened up that door, or they had a code, or they were very familiar with the way to get into the house. That shows a real good knowledge of them and their home. They got in, so that's pretty smart. They probably, this was done maybe in the dark. If the Tepes were still sleeping, they fired their rounds. We believe probably Mr. Tepe had a number of rounds. He was shot first, or shot. He had like maybe 5 rounds, I've heard. Ms. Tepe may have had like 2, or at least 1, I think they acknowledged. So if they recovered a few rounds, perhaps the killer or killers were smart enough to try to scoop up, and maybe missed a few, but they tried to scoop up some of those 9mm shells, thinking that would help them in their getaway. Maybe they were not privy to the idea that there was a camera out there. But yeah, they were cold. They were calculating. They had no interest in hurting those children whatsoever. Those children were asleep, and perhaps they, because it was at night, maybe they used silencers. They were more professional than the regular thug you see on the street, who's gonna spray in a crowd of people, and when there's a riot or something like that. This was a directed attack on this couple, and the killers did their job and got out of there very, very quickly. And we can hope that there was just enough evidence to identify a getaway car, and maybe, as you say, a fingerprint or a partial fingerprint on the rounds. But this was definitely the work of somebody who was fairly proficient, fairly professional. Absolutely.
You know, the chat is asking and making some great comments. I'm just going to read a
Yeah.
few of them. Richie Rich 2713. Besides being a dentist from his last marriages, there was a lot of businesses, so this has to do with money. Blueberry Pies dash S6Q. We stayed at the house once a month. Why? Good question. Very good question. I'll address that in a second. Law enforcement said between 2 to 5 a.m. So who would get in at that time? You know, Draga Pro, that's a great comment too. But I just, first of all, gunshots make a lot of noise. But yet, there was no 911 call from these gunshots, was there? No, there was not. Usually, if there's gunfire and gunshots inside a house, someone calls 911, a next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
No one called 911 when these shots were fired. That could mean a lot of things. Perhaps the gun was muffled somehow. Mike suggested on the last show, you know, perhaps a silencer. I don't know. But there was no 911 call generated from these shots. That's a little bit unusual. A Truth in Melody. The crime is out of control here, and Mayor is hiding that fact. Well, look, what I say, what I said the last time, there's an extensive thing done called a victimology, and that is the study of the victims, both Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique. We will look deeply, and the detectives will go deep into their background. And one way we do that, of course, is cell phones, right? Everyone these days has a cell phone. I'm sure they have a cell phone. They have text messages. They go on Instagram. They go on other sites. They text with people. They have phone calls from people. I would not, one of the first things would be a treasure trove would be, could the killer have called one of them?
Yes. Right.
Before doing this dirty deed? Believe it or not, it happens. Or the killer's phone number, or has made calls into the victims prior to this crime. That has to be looked at. And the whole Rolodex of calls from both has to be looked at and dissected. And I put a detective on each phone, and I would go through every single one of those. I'd call every single person in that phone that called them in the last week, last 2 weeks, last month, and see recurring phone calls, see themes in their cell phone. All of this is investigation 101, 102, 103, and 104, but very, very important and mundane. And the most important thing here, which I cannot believe we're not hearing much about, is the video canvas. There are Ring cameras all over this neighborhood. Ring camera on this house. Traffic camera at the corner. They had to have seen something. They had to have seen someone going into this house. How do we narrow it down? We spoke about narrowing it down. No one called 911 when the shots were fired. So they're giving a timeline of 12 midnight to 0900 hours, right? But at some point, they were shot. And there's other ways to develop that timeline, and it's called science, forensic science. The temperature of the bodies is one indicator. One, not a very reliable indicator, but because the bodies were in the house, a little bit more reliable than if they were out on the street where they would be subject to cold weather and the temperature would drop rapidly. That'll give us somewhat of an indication. The other thing is rigor mortis. Rigor mortis is on set about 2 hours after death, and then goes away after about 4 to 6 hours, I believe it is. So these are all scientific timelines of how to figure out when they actually were killed. All of these things are very important. And guess what? The police know this, but we do not know it. But we can conjecture right now, and that they know a much narrower timeline than the 8 hours they're giving us. They may have it down to 2 hours that they were killed within a 2 hour period. So that is very important. Also very important with the timeline of this case. This is from a local news station. Let me play this up here.
At 6 starts with breaking news in the death of an Ohio dentist and his wife. Take a look at this map. Right now, Columbus police asking anyone who may have photos or videos in this area of Wineland Park from Tuesday between midnight and 9 a.m. to send those videos and photos to police.
Now, police are searching for evidence in the deaths of Spencer and Monique Tepe, who were found shot and killed inside their North 4th Street home Tuesday morning. Their 2 young children were inside unharmed. Thank you for joining us tonight at 6, everybody. I'm Yolanda Harris.
And I'm Station Again in for Jeff Hogan. Tonight, police still have not named a suspect in that double murder, but Columbus police are now narrowing down the time frame as to when they think the couple was killed. And tonight, they need your help.
So we're going to show you a QR code to submit photos in just a minute. So get your phone ready for that. But first, we're going to want to get out to 10 TV's Lacey Crisp, who has been covering this story since it happened.
She joins us live outside the home where the couple was found. Lacey, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, family members tell me they are grieving a tremendous loss. Now, there are flowers out in front of the house and on the steps. Now, Spencer's soccer teammates left flowers and a soccer ball to remember and honor the couple. In what looked like a picture-perfect wedding.
I vowed to do my best to always keep making you laugh because your smile is my favorite thing. I love you.
Spencer and Monique Tepe married inside their home nearly 5 years ago.
I knew that God was guiding me to my person and that when I met him, it would be the most magical thing ever. And boy, is that an understatement.
The smiles turned to tears Tuesday.
We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
Dr. Tepe didn't show up for work.
I just want to comment on that. If that is what the 911 caller said, and that wasn't relayed by the 911 dispatcher to the police, then she's remiss in her duties. Because that sounded to me like a pretty serious call, Mike, that we're very concerned something's not okay here. And it doesn't seem like the 911 operator asked him any questions like, well, why are you concerned? And is he married? Does he have children? None of those questions. Usually 911 operators are trained to ask those questions, Mike.
Yeah, because you need to get the 911 operator's information to the police so that the police know as much as possible what they're going to be dealing with and how they should approach the job. They may have thought, oh, he's missing from work and I can't get in touch with his wife. And maybe the 911 operator said to the police dispatcher, well, this is just a case of a guy's late for work. Something like that. You don't know how it was actually relayed. You'd have to get that tape from the local PD. But the police may, as much as we are criticizing them because we thought they just did the okie dokie kind of thing, the fact is maybe they weren't given enough information to make them concerned enough to walk around the back of the house, look in the windows, check the locked doors, see if there was anybody, maybe a potential burglary, maybe a robbery, something that you want to see if there's, and maybe knock on a neighbor's door and say, I was here, I'm looking for the Tepes. Do you have any information on the family? Well, there's 2 kids. Okay, well, that now heightens up my my level of alertness, and I better go and take another look at that house. So you're really not sure, but that is a problem. The communication between the 911 operator and the police dispatcher may not have been as good as it could possibly be.
Someone who was just asking in the chat, he doesn't know how that they can rule out robbery. Well, there are a lot of signs when there's a robbery. First of all, robbers are not, they're not neat. They're not neat in committing their crime. They ransack a place, they pull out drawers, they tear up walls, they do all kinds of things like that. So yes, they don't know specifically if there was nothing taken, but they can surmise from looking at the crime scene that this was not a home invasion. This was not a robbery. This seems like a personal double murder. And it seems like, and again, this is, I worked 10 years in Manhattan North Homicide Squad. So we would sit around after a case like this. And besides doing the victimologies, we would talk and we would give our opinions on what we think. And because every homicide investigation needs a direction. What direction do you go in this investigation? And clearly, these people were good, upstanding people. Could Dr. Tepe have had financial problems? Yeah, absolutely. Could he have had an affair, or could his wife have had an affair? All those things are possible, but all of those things will be looked into. But judging by the crime scene, it does not appear that this was a robbery or anything but a targeted, basically an execution of two people. Let me go back to the news station's report on this.
When the Athens Dental Depot opened at 8 a.m., police went to the home and discovered the couple had been shot and killed. Their two children. Family members tell me their daughter just turned 4 and their son just 17 months old were not hurt. Columbus police say there was no sign of forced entry and no weapon found inside the home. According to a police report, crime scene analysts found spent 9mm casings. Family members say Spencer was fluent in Spanish and gave back through big brothers and big sisters. He was a huge Bengals and Buckeyes fan. They say Monique was a loving, patient, and joyful mother with a background in childhood education. In a statement from the couple's family, they wrote, "We are heartbroken beyond words. While no outcome can ever undo this loss, our family is committed to seeing this tragedy fully and fairly brought to justice and to honoring Spencer and Monique by protecting the future of the children they loved so deeply." Flowers have now replaced crime scene tape outside the home where there was once so much love. Spencer's soccer teammates consoled one another, leaving a ball and flowers to honor their friend.
And take a look at your screen right now. There is a QR code. If you have any information, you can give it to police anonymously. Now, there is a crime camera here just across the street from the family's home. We did confirm with Columbus Police today that that city crime camera was working during the time frame that they're looking at.
So they're looking at all kinds of video cameras. They're looking at video from everywhere, but yet they are asking people, if you have any video that may help in this investigation, please send it in. And there was the QR code. You can send it in. That is common practice in investigations like this. And I always cite the Boston Marathon bombing, where people's cell phones became such an integral part of that investigation that they caught the bombers on video, on cell phone video, and it helped the FBI a great deal. Venus Gal 2706. I've seen plenty of people saying this was a bad neighborhood or just around the corner from one, or that the block was the only one renovated, et cetera, et cetera. More than one person, more than two said, look, you can walk blocks away from a great neighborhood and wind up in a bad neighborhood, right? Criminals travel. Criminals have cars, right? Criminals have bicycles, motorcycles. They can travel to a location. But this does not look like a crime of opportunity. This looks like a crime of planning, a personal crime. Mike.
Yeah. As you said, it's probably it was something that was planned, absolutely planned. It wasn't, there's a random door open at 3:00 in the morning and somebody was walking by and they just decided to go inside and look around and kill two people. No, this was a planned, this was an execution, as you said. And I just want to mention, we talk about the victimology, Richie Rich kind of alluded to possible financial issues with maybe the dental practice or maybe in gambling debt, that sort of thing. Definitely Richie Rich, that will definitely be investigated. The police will turn over look into all kinds of financial records. They're looking at phone records. They're doing all of those things, the geofencing, to see if you never know, the perpetrator may have had his or her cell phone with them and in that neighborhood. And that would indicate what phones were in that neighborhood between, say midnight and 2:00 or midnight 4, whatever the police have it narrowed down to. But there is enough technology out there, and with the ability to get to financial records too, the police are trying to get the best overall picture of this couple, their activities, their lifestyle, their debts, any sort of beefs they have with other people have with them. They're doing a thorough investigation, definitely.
You know, Mike, I'm glad you mentioned geofencing because it's a technology that not many people know about. In fact, not many criminals know about it, which is a
Right.
great thing. And really what it is, police can use geofence warrants to track devices in an area at a specific time by asking tech companies like Google for location data from their databases, which collects info from phones with location services on. It works in reverse of traditional warrants, gathering data on many devices, innocent bystanders included, to identify suspects. Its legality and privacy implications are debated, but it is a unbelievable technology, and the FBI uses it all the time. So in essence, what we're saying here is that if a perpetrator that was in that house had his phone on, it will ping from that location and they can identify his phone. Doesn't even have to be in the house, in that location, or a laptop or a computer. It can identify all of, so unbelievable technology. Will they go so far as to use that? I bet you, yeah. I bet you they will, because right now they don't have a perpetrator. They don't have a suspect. It's early. But they're working on it. So geofencing, fair game. Absolutely. Venus Gal 2706, I came in late with the doors locked back up because one of the friends said they couldn't get in the house when they heard the kids. The doors were locked, yes, when the police got there. The police had to boom the door once they realized that there was a crime committed in there. And for any of you guys that worry about the legality of that, that is legal for the police to do that under the emergency exception to a search warrant. Exigent circumstances. Obviously, there was a crime committed in there that qualifies as an emergency exception. So no search warrant needed. They boom the door, and only thing is needed is paperwork on the door to fix the door that the police destroyed in order to get into the home. Now, what did the police see once they got into that home? And these are questions we don't have the full answers to, but what we are hearing is that Spencer was in the bedroom, and unknown really the position of his body. They said he was across the bed, but apparently shot numerous times. And Monique Tepe was in another room, and it's been reported that she was shot once in the chest, perhaps twice. So based on that, who was the target, Mike?
Bill, I got to go with Dr. Tepe on this one, because I would think, my thinking is he was the primary target, because you're going to shoot that person a number of times, and then Mrs. Tepe, you have to kill her. Maybe they didn't intend to kill her, but she woke up and she had to be eliminated. And perhaps if any of those children had woken up, they may have been killed too. But I believe that Mr. Tepe was the absolute main target. They were shot a number of times because they wanted to make sure that person, whoever killed him, wanted to make sure that he was dead. And so that's what I think happened. And then she was unfortunately collateral, but I think he was the number one target.
I totally agree with you. And the neatness of this crime and the targeted nature and all of the factors like no forced entry, a very neat crime scene, if that's a possibility, it wasn't ransacked. The drawers weren't gone through, the closets weren't gone through. So all of those things are leading us to believe that this was a targeted murder. When I look up on the screen, we have a picture of the front of the house. What the police also would want to know and want to see is areas of entry and exit. How did and where did the perpetrator or perpetrators gain access to that house? And how did they leave it? Did they check to see for footprints on the side of the house? Did they check for footprints on the stairwells lead? I'm sure they did all of these things, but I'm just asking, playing devil's advocate. All of these things are investigative steps. And I believe this case is going to be solved. I really do believe that. But one of the things we all want to know about, where And how much video do you have? Is anyone identified? And even if they have video, if the perpetrator has his face covered or has a hoodie and his face covered, it doesn't help you to identify him. It gives you a time frame. The camera will tell you what time that person entered the house. But even with all of that, it is an investigative tool, is an investigative lead, but it doesn't give you the perpetrator. But it gives you, as I said, a basis. Is the perpetrator a male or a female?
Yes.
Is there one perpetrator? Is there multi-perpetrators? All of those things tell a story. And all of those things potentially will help the investigators find out who did this. The other thing is, when we talk about victimology, we mean talking to the closest friends of Dr. Tepe and his wife, Monique, because people that know most about your life are not your family. It's usually your friends that know intimate details of your life, problems you were having, financial problems. If one was having an affair, a friend will know that. And I don't think they would hesitate to tell the police, because they want to have this case solved. They want to find out who killed their friend or friends, in the case of Dr. Tepe and his wife, Monique. So that is why skilled investigators must canvass the neighborhood, door-to-door canvass for witnesses, door-to-door canvass for video. So very important. Mike.
Yeah, anybody that they've talked to, drinking buddies, soccer buddies, because if you're having a soccer game and after that you go for a beer, you go for soda, you're talking, you're at practice, you're going to be a little bit loose. You're not going to be guarded. These are your buddies. You're out there sweating on the grass, kicking the ball around. You start to say things about your life, what's bothering you. You're having issues with your wife. You're having issues with your brother-in-law. She's having issues with her ex. You're having an issue with your ex. The job is driving you crazy. Whatever it happens to be, you're going to be making all that kind of small talk because you're amongst friends and your guard is down. They will have a lot of information that maybe his boss at work or maybe a family member wouldn't have. All those unguarded moments where your guard is down and you're just free to ramble on about your life, and you're going to give away a few things about what's bothering you and what may be your problems in your life, and that will help narrow down the suspect pool tremendously.
Folks, there's a lot of questions being asked in the chat. Some of them I don't have the answer to. At Eliza Krogan 4302, waiting for press conference, showing videos maybe. I think they're going to be very closed-mouthed. I don't think they're going to give out any information. That's been their MO from the beginning. I think they're afraid to give out any of the information that they may have. At Emmy Heddle 8510, yeah, where's the video of the officer actually going to their door? Why is that important? We know an officer went to the door. It generated a response to his radio dispatcher. Fuzzy Doxy, who drives 75 miles to work? Fuzzy, when I read that, I almost thought it was a mistake that the doctor drove 75 miles one way to his job, to his dental practice. That's a hell of a long ride. And it's not his practice. He works for somebody else. Yeah, I found that to be a little bit strange. And I'm sure one of the main people that's going to be interviewed is the 911 caller, who was the owner of the dental practice. The owner of the dental practice called 911 with his concern that Dr. Tepe had not shown up for work. And he voiced an opinion. He voiced concern. He was very much worried. Cherry B at Cherry B 968, something away from his dental practice. Look, we can all conjecture about this case, and I think it's good that we do. I'm glad that you guys are voicing your opinions. At Super Squirrel DV1, I want to know more about the second person that phoned the dispatch. I believe that was a friend on the scene that actually probably walked up to the window and saw a body in the bedroom. Do you think he's going to be interviewed? You bet. You bet he's going to be interviewed. And if anything, it seems like he did a hell of a service, did a good job, because the first responder, the officer, he didn't do a thorough investigation. He walked away. And there's 2 young kids, 4 years old and 1 year old, in a room uncared for. And a first responder does an okey doke. Oh, okey doke. There's no one home. Yeah, they're home, but they're dead. That's why they're not coming to the door. Poor investigation, very poor. Mike.
Yeah, luckily for probably that, even if that officer did an excellent job, they were probably already dead for hours. And so, that is something that is it's bad enough, but it could have been made a whole lot worse. But, that person needs a little training. That person needs to go back and learn just the basics, because this is something where this is your job, and to go there and to do the okey doke and not even look through the windows, nothing, not even do any sort of thing other than walk around, maybe walk around the house, or maybe just walk up to the front door and then say okey doke and walk away, clear the call and go, get a cup of coffee, whatever it happens to be. That's not good. That's inexcusable. Luckily, for the detectives, is that he did not go around and disturb the crime scene and do something dumb. We've seen cops pick things up from a crime scene and walk through the crime scene, dirty up the crime scene. That didn't happen. So at least the crime scene stayed pristine for the crime scene detectives and the homicide detectives.
100%. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, make lots of comments, share us with your friends and family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership. You can become a member of the Police Off the Cuff family. There's 5 different levels. We appreciate all of our friends, fans, and subscribers that support this channel, this unique police perspective, true crime show. I want to play this from local news station 6.
Has gained national, even international attention. We've tried to talk directly with Columbus police, but they tell us they have nobody available to answer our questions on camera. Now, homicide detectives are asking for the public's help. 4 friends carrying flowers and a soccer ball, keeping the memorial alive outside the North 4th Street home, where Spencer and Monique Tepe were found brutally shot to death Tuesday. Their 2 young children found unharmed inside. Unlike Tuesday morning, the crime scene tape and police cars that were parked outside are now gone. But we did see police doing guard duty at 2 homes belonging to relatives several miles away. Those relatives didn't want to talk to us, and neither does Columbus police, who told us, since this is an active investigation, we have no updates to provide at this time. Earlier this week, a CPD spokesman told us detectives were hoping the cameras around the Tepe's house and on the street would point them to a suspect. But now, days later, homicide detectives are asking for help. They need anyone who may have video, photographs, or digital evidence, including suspicious individuals or vehicles from Tuesday, December 30th, between midnight and 9 a.m. to reach out to them. And the request covers more than just the couple's block. It's a huge area that covers Summit Street, North Grant Avenue, East 7th, and East 11th Avenue. The couple's bodies were discovered just after 10 Tuesday morning after workers at Spencer's Athens dental office asked police to do a welfare check since he didn't show up for work. Officers found no obvious signs of forced entry and no gun was found at the scene. The Tepe's children, ages 4 and 1, are now in the care of relatives. On your side, Terry Sullivan, ABC 6 News.
In just the last couple of hours, we received a statement from the family of Spencer and Monique Tepe.
Rodney Dunnigan is here. Rodney, they are absolutely devastated by all of this.
Jessica and Mike, they're calling this situation senseless and tragic. They say the couple were extraordinary people whose lives were filled with love, joy, and a deep connection to others.
We're getting a better look at who Spencer and Monique Tepe were. Their family sending us a lengthy statement. They called Spencer a devoted and proud father, a loving partner, and a friend to everyone he met. They say he was warm, intelligent, and endlessly welcoming. Spencer was an OSU graduate, member of the American Dental Association, and fluent in Spanish. Their family says he was deeply committed to serving others, giving back through big brothers, big sisters. Sports was also a big part of Spencer's life, being a huge fan of the Bengals and, of course, the Buckeyes. They go on to describe Monique as a loving, patient, and joyful mother whose warmth defined her. She had a background in childhood education. Monique was also a baker.
Mr. and Mrs. Tepe.
So, absolutely tragic. We watched that. What I can't help but thinking is the two children left behind, 4 years old and 1 year old, and we'll never really get to know their parents. Just a horrific crime, and I think that the police are on. Look. One of the reasons they don't give information out to the media is because A, it can taint the investigation, and B, the media will put undue pressure if they learn certain things like, oh, how come it's not solved yet? The way they did, we always cite the Brian Koberger case that it took 6 weeks to arrest him, and, the media was calling it a cold case, bringing the FBI, bringing the CIA, it was ridiculous. And it takes time. Investigation takes time. Investigation is an art and it's a science, and you can bet they are using all the tools they have to try to solve this case, Mike.
Yeah, Bill. As they said on that news burst there, that the police don't have a suspect, and they're like at dead end, and they're giving the impression that the police absolutely have nothing, and they need the public to offer some sort of evidence. That's a little dramatic. I think really the police are being very tight-lipped. They may already have a person of interest that they're looking at, depending on how they, as you say, the direction of the investigation, but they don't want to release a lot of information. They want to tie up a lot of loose ends, and they don't want members of the public to know about who they might be looking at, because you don't want to alarm that person that they are on the suspect list. You may have that person and you want to interview them, but you want to interview them in an air of friendliness and non-challenging. But if they hear their name mentioned, like the police are looking for Bill Cannon or Michael Geary, we're going to be lawyering up immediately. So this is where, as you say, this is the art of the investigation, where you're playing the chess match. You don't want to alarm that person. You don't want to tip your hand. And of course, you always want the public to give you any kind of information they may have. But it doesn't mean that when the police ask for public information, that they are totally devoid of clues on their own. But I think it's really better off being very tight-lipped than being very loquacious at this point.
I think you're 100% right, Mike. And, people in the chat are talking about, they think that the police have something now. I happen to believe that too. I believe that they're on the trail of someone. I really do believe that. TNT, at TNT Nationwide, is it true it was the ex-husband, just a rumor? Look, I don't put out any suspects until law enforcement names someone as a potential suspect. It's easy to look at the ex-husband, and especially if they had a breakup that was a little harsh, to say, oh, he's a suspect. But I don't know would the police, would the detectives have interviewed him? Absolutely. They would be remiss if they did not interview everyone within the small circle of the Dr. Tepe and his wife, Monique, the small circle of their life. Interview everyone. And that's what victimology is, the study of the victims. Sometimes you find out things about victims that you don't even want to know, some of the things you find out, But that's all important. That's all part of the investigation. alcohol use, drug use, sexual proclivities, habits, cars that they drive, property they own, friends that they have, habits they do, food they eat. All these things are part of the victimology. Things they do, as I said, hobbies, sports. He plays a lot of sports. He has friends. He plays soccer. All of those things come up with answers because part of an investigation is to ask questions. And when you ask questions, you get answers. And when you get answers, there's more questions that come from those answers. That is the nature of investigation. And people are already, getting frustrated that there's no one in handcuffs yet. I don't always look. I'm not going to guarantee, but I believe they will make an arrest in this case. And when they do, I think it's going to be surprising to all of us who it is, because it seems like it's a known to. It seems like it's personal. It seems like it's someone that they know, someone in their inner circle. And that's judging by all the things we spoke about before we reach this point in the show, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, this isn't, like you say, a random sort of action. This is something really personal. That means it's someone really close to them that knows them, that maybe have been even in a house before, and that maybe knows their habits. And so that means that's like the first or second circle of your family or your immediate friends just outside your family. But this is something that is very, very solvable. And I think you're right. And we will be surprised because it will be very deeply, deeply personal in this case because of the way the homicide took place.
100%. This is the police asking for help with video.
Columbus Police Department is now asking for your help in trying to solve the murder of Spencer and Monique Tepe. At the QR code just to the side of me, that is what they want you to scan. They want you to send over any digital evidence you may have. That means photos or videos that were taken on the morning of December 30th between midnight and 9 a.m. That was the morning police found the bodies of the murdered couple shot in their home. Co-workers of Spencer Tepe came to the house after he never showed up for work. Police found the couple's 2 young children crying inside, their parents deceased. Nearly a week after the bodies were found, with no weapon at the scene or sign of forced entry, there is no suspect. On your screen is a map of the area. Police are hoping witnesses will come forward if they saw anything or anyone suspicious in the areas of Summit Street to Grand Avenue between East 7th Avenue to East 11th Avenue. As the family grapples with the loss of the Tepes, they're asking for help as well, creating a GoFundMe to help family members provide for the 2 children the couple leaves behind. They say they're overwhelmed with the amount of support they've gotten from the community. In Columbus, I'm Rocky Walker reporting.
So horrible, right? It's a horrible case. 2 innocent people, as far as we know, innocent people right now that have lost their lives, left 2 young children behind. Someone in the chat is asking a very good question. I'm going to read it. At Deborah Hall 3488, I wonder if the 4-year-old can help. I'm sure with the right professional questions, but I feel horrible for those babies. So cruel. The answer, Deborah, is no. A 4-year-old is unswearable. A 4-year-old cannot be a witness. I've had it. We've tried it. We had a 4-year-old that witnessed a horrific murder of his grandmother and her boyfriend, and we brought the 4-year-old to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and no good. It definitely could not remember. Was just talking, basically in circles. A 4-year-old is unswearable, basically. Mike, you want to weigh in on that since you do have a law degree?
Yeah, they probably would definitely, as you say, they would definitely wouldn't be swearable as a witness in court. However, you never know. You might get a name to go from, and it would help you to point to somebody in investigation. But yeah, they would not be a witness in court, but they could maybe give during the investigation. They're not, not being sworn in. They're just being talked to by a detective. It's possible you can get a name, but as you say, That's a long shot. That's like, that's like one in a million. But
Mike,
you
I'm
never
just
know.
telling you from my experience. No, they
Yeah.
are not smart enough. They're not
Yeah.
sophisticated enough to be a witness. They're not.
That's
So
right.
I don't think that, most 4-year-olds have about the same intellect. They're not okay as a witness anyway.
Yeah.
So, folks, I just this is a horrible case. This is like the third episode we've done on this case, and I find it to be extremely interesting. And I would like to know a little more of the inside investigation that Columbus homicide is doing on this case, because this is the kind of case that if you are a detective or a detective boss like I was, you want to work a case like this. You really do. You really want to bring justice for these two people, and you want to bring justice to their family, and you want to bring justice to their children. And you don't mind never going home during a case like this, getting no sleep, and just working around the clock until you solve it. And I'm sure that's what these detectives are doing. Some guys are in the chat are asking, was this a keyless entry? Yes, it was. It had a keypad. You could punch in numbers and open the locks. So could the killer or killers have known the key entry code? Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely a possibility. So, folks, we're going to stay with this case till the end, till they put someone in handcuffs, And as long as we have some new information to report to you, we will bring it to you. Mike, your final thoughts.
I think that the public should be very, very confident in this investigation between the scientific evidence we talked about, the shells that were left there, possibility of DNA on the shells, geofencing, the cameras, things like that. I think that the police have this well in hand, and this is definitely a solvable case.
Mike, I 100% agree with you. And all we can do now is pray and root for the Columbus, Ohio homicide squad and the detectives that cover this precinct, that covers this house. And we can pray for the families and these small little children that are now left parentless. That's all we can do. Folks, again, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.